Great evening, great evening. Beach or beaches, as Mr. Seiko would like to say. Welcome, welcome. You have tuned in to another excellent Beach Brothers show. This is the place where it's a great fun look at business and politics here in the state of Virginia. Tonight, our good brother Seiko will be a little busy. He might join us a little later, but right now he's a bit indisposed, as is good brother Jose Cruz. I'll be doing as much of the host duties as I can muster tonight. Remember, Jose Cruz is who to look for when designing your retirement, and Mr. Seiko Varner is the lead empowerment trendsetter. He also lends out private money and handles debt consolidations. I work at the Ocean Holiday in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and I like to rattle the cages of the Virginia Beach political establishment. Following in that vein, I'm going to step to the podium in just a second, but let's get right on over to the show introduction.
So look, the Beach Brothers Show is a show where we deal with Virginia business and politics.
Well, I'm Conrad Chesviner. I'm a Hampton West political activist. Best ideas for community improvement happen to drive me.
I help folks that are approaching retirement and in their retirement years.
I have what I call the empowerment agenda. And that means that everything I do is focused on empowerment. You want to give a salute to Tally and Twine. It's time for you to have a high quality watch made in Virginia, made in Portsmouth, Virginia, from Tally and Twine. We want to say thanks to Southern Volkswagen Greenbrier for their great level of sponsorship. If you need a new car, you don't need to go far. Southern Volkswagen Greenbrier. And ladies, if you want your brows to say, wow, check out IamLitaWee.com. Microblading by IamLitaWee.com. I'm Seiko Varner. I do credit fixes, tax resolutions. I lend private money to real estate investors, and we do debt consolidations. If you need any of these services, contact me as provided. And now it's time to get beachy on the Beach Brothers Show.
It's definitely time to get beachy, and I'm going to get over to my beachy podium here. I was in a quick bind yesterday. I finished my work shift at about 3:20 p.m., 20 minutes later than the schedule suggested. I planned to drive from the oceanfront to the municipal center and then do my early voting. Then I was going to grab a bite, as it was my eat day. For the record, I do intermittent fasting. Look that up. Afterwards, I would drive to town center for an appointment after 5 p.m. I did all of that. I did it all while driving safely and quickly, by the way. The right car can help you do that too, and I suggest a quick, stout Jetta. I received mine in Chesapeake at Southern Volkswagen, 1248 South Military Highway. Like me, you can hop over and make sure to chat it up with Charlie Roy, get a nice, inexpensive car. You can drive all over the city in an afternoon and early vote. It all starts with going in to see Charlie Roy, and you'll be on your way to do all of that. On my way to the ballot box, I chose the Democrat ballot. After all, I am a member of the Virginia Beach Democratic Committee. I started with the Attorney General post. I've taken a picture with Mark Herring, and he was particularly anti-Trump in the past 4 years, so I appreciate all of that. Delegate Jay Jones is a cool member of the Virginia General Assembly, and if he wins, it makes it easier for Hannah Kinder to run for his delegate seat, and we had her on the Beach Brothers show. However, I recall Delegate Jones attended one too many fundraisers of my former political opponent, so respectfully, I will choose Mark Herring for Attorney General. Lieutenant Governor had some interesting options. Haya Ayala, Elizabeth Guzman, whom we drew, by the way, Mark Levine, Andrea McClellan, Sean Perryman, Sam Razul, and Xavier Warren. We've had Liz on the show once. We've had Sean on the show twice. I didn't get any committed efforts by the other candidates to appear on the Beach Brothers show. So because Sean is both bold and he's young and he's been on our show, I went with Sean Perryman for Lieutenant Governor. Then there's the governor race. Terry McAuliffe, Jennifer McClellan, Jennifer Carroll Foy, Justin Fairfax, and Lee Carter. Lee has been on this show, and I reached out for over a year to various levels of Jennifer Carroll Foy's staff, volunteers as well, all to get her on the Beach Brothers show. She did appear a couple times at Virginia Beach Democratic Committee events. She even appeared on the Black Lives Matter 757 stream for an interview just the other day, but didn't select to do one on the Beach Brothers show. Terry has been a governor already, and he looks to be trying to sort of buy his way in another go around as well. And that would sort of stifle a good opportunity for Virginia to be the first state to have a Black woman as governor. I met and hugged Jennifer McClellan last month at an event in Norfolk. So when voting, I picked Jennifer McClellan. My podium today highlights a bold ticket like Mark Herring, Sean Perryman, and Jennifer McClellan. I suggest you look into it too. And I must say that I can't say I wanted to at least give 1 or 2 or 3 thoughts to voting possibly for Princess Blanding for governor if Terry happens to win the Democratic nomination, but I guess more on that down the line. But that's just my look at the podium. With us tonight are going to be a couple of cool special friends of mine, dynamic Democrat women within Virginia, businesswoman, former Virginia congressional candidate, and Beach Brothers show guest, Vanjie Williams is with me tonight. I'm going to try and bring her on right now. Let's see. Yep, I definitely see that she's attached to the feed. We'll bring on Vanjie in just a second. Also making her first Beach Brothers appearance is a great Virginia activist and General Assembly rabble-rouser, Monica Hutchinson. How are you doing, Monica?
I'm doing well.
That's good. Good to have you on for the first time. And now I see Ms. Vanjie. How you doing, Ms. Vanjie?
How are y'all? I'm telling you.
Pretty good.
Broadband is real.
You're absolutely correct about that. Now, ladies, welcome, and thank you too for joining the show as we'll look to ask our special guests some questions. And would like to give you guys an opportunity. Would you like to do a little brief couple minutes of a podium like I did, just talk about a topic? Would you like to lead off with that, Ms. Vanjie, or would you like to go straight into the questions?
Okay.
Or did she freeze?
So, I'm not frozen. Can you see me?
I can hear every other word, and I can see you every other few seconds.
Well,
How
I'll do
about
my
this?
podium talk. You go into the questions.
All right. I'll take you off the stream just 1 second to see if that might fix that. Ms. Monica, do you have anything you might want to say before we go into the questions today, just about politics in general?
Sure. Well, one, thank you for inviting me and having me on tonight. I will apologize to everyone. I do have a hard stop coming up. The life of an organizer, multiple meetings, but it's okay. And so I will just follow your lead if it's okay and just share my choices. Is that okay?
Sure.
Cool. So I will start with governor. For governor, my choice and my candidate is Senator Jennifer McClellan for governor. She's absolutely amazing. Over 15 years in the General Assembly, over 30 years within the Democratic Party, vice chair of the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus, over 300 bills passed since being in the General Assembly. Just an amazing person, been a champion that we needed, that some of us didn't even know we needed, but she's been there doing the work. And, under her leadership, Virginia has definitely changed a lot. And I would love to see the path that she would help lead us down as governor. For lieutenant governor, my choice was Hala Ayala. Hala is an amazing, amazing person. I absolutely respect her as a delegate. Since her coming in, she was one of the delegates that helped us get Medicaid expansion, raise teachers' pay. All of the things that we asked is what Hala's been doing, keeping her campaign promises. And also, I really do appreciate her vision as lieutenant governor to be there and be there behind the scenes, taking a role in crafting legislation. Also want to add that she's, has background in cybersecurity. And with everything going on right now, that's an amazing asset to have in our state government. And for Attorney General, I am a strong supporter for Mark Herring for reelection. I think he's been doing a great job. And since he's doing a great job, honestly, like my vote for Mark Herring is not a vote against Jay. It's a vote for Mark. So just want to add that.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. I see Miss Vanjie over here in a car. Hopefully, I'll be able to hear nice and clearly now that the clutter is gone.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Would you like to have a minute or so to have a little podium to yourself?
Well, I just want to tell everybody, look, I am out here and I'm seeing people, and I'm not going to say too much about who I'm going to vote for because I know almost all of them. So I am going to hold that too close to my chest. But I'm asking everybody to still be mindful that we do have a pandemic. Whether you're canvassing, whether you're out going shopping, please be mindful that not everybody has had their vaccine. And please, if you haven't had the vaccine, go out and get it. We have to get through this so that our children can return to school, so people can return to work safely without having to wear these dreadful masks that make us hot. But I ask that everybody take the time, make sure you're doing your due diligence so that we can get through this pandemic, so we can open America back up the right way, where everybody can go back to work and work full time, part time, from home, wherever, without this concern. And that's all I got to say on that.
Alrighty. Well, I'm going to take you guys off the screen briefly because now we're about to introduce our special guest of tonight. Tonight's highlighted guest for the Beach Brothers show is Michelle Maldonado, hailing from Bristow, Virginia, right near Manassas. Michelle is running in the Democratic primary, remember that it's June 8th, to win the nomination to House District 50 seat. So let's all welcome Miss Michelle Maldonado. How are you doing tonight?
Hey there. I'm doing great. Good to see you. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Love to have you on and shoot the breeze on business and politics, especially here for Virginia. Let's talk a little bit about your history. You have a deep family-filled history with service, and you yourself is a former attorney, business leader, and small business owner. So if you could take a minute or so to talk about your path to this point in life.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I love the question because some people think that you get from point A to point Z and it's the straight line. But most of us live a life where there are lots of turns and twists. And so my path here wasn't necessarily conventional. You mentioned I come from a family of service, but I also come from a family of first, from educators, from people who represent all branches of the military. I didn't know that I wanted to be an attorney when I first sort of started out. But because my family sort of instilled that sense of we must serve and bring people along with us wherever we are, whatever stage or phase of life we're in, I started looking around once I got into college about what were some things that I saw that I frankly thought were injustices. And in college, that was the first sort of turning point that kind of set me on this path. And that was, I'm totally dating myself, but it was back in like the 80s, 90s, where there's this huge Wall Street greed. Everybody knew about it. And we had tons of American companies that were really abusing their employees here in the US and abroad. And I thought, how do we get into those places and start turning those organizations from the inside out to they're showing up as better citizens in the world? And I decided in that moment that I wanted to go and get to work in corporate organizations to make sure that those companies were good citizens. And so I had to decide, does a legal degree or a business degree help me be better at doing that? And I ultimately chose a law degree. Now I had to work through college and I worked through law school and then ultimately did just that. And I started seeing as I was moving about, I started out in the tech industry. So I have a lot of the technology experience, which I think is going to be really important as we move forward and thinking about it. How do we help make sure our legislature, our infrastructure, all of those things are safe and secure. And so I started working in this space, and then ultimately moved to the business side because that's where I saw where people were behaving badly, and I wanted to make a difference there. So I did that for several years, working in leadership development, organizational development, and very sticky, conflict-ridden organizations. First as businesses, then universities, then nonprofits, and then ultimately the work grew so much in the way I was helping bring people together and bridge builders to get things build bridges to get things done. Other countries, other government organizations started to take notice, and so the first was in Europe, and I started doing some work at some European countries, and then I was invited by some Canadian government executives to come in. And then after all of that work, our own government started to take notice and invited me in to work with them, the Department of Homeland Security and Customs and Border Protection. And then ultimately, when we had the crisis, the attack on Capitol Hill, I was invited to come in to help rebuild bridges with an organization across congressional offices. And then to be brought in by the United Nations Foundation to help do the same kind of work with our international peacekeepers and humanitarian aid workers. So I was doing that all around. And what I was doing here in my own backyard, I was getting asked by parents and other business owners, can you take some of that work and bring it here for our kids? So pre-COVID, I launched a teen retreat, and it went so well that what was formerly called the Candy Factory, now the Art Factory, asked for me to make that program, to make the center its home for the program for the region, and then COVID hit. We were also asked to do that for parents, and so I've had to sort of transfer to virtual. And as I was doing that, looking across our district and all the pain points, so we've got disproportionately women and parents being impacted, and small business owners being impacted by COVID in the recovery. We have things like affordable housing. So when I look at all the pain points, it's very clear to me, like there's this huge calling to come in and be a part of the solution. And I want to answer that call, bringing all of the skill set to bear to help our district.
Sounds like both a world traveler and a great person of service. And I'm glad you're interested in wanting to jump in here. So I also want to touch on here that you have a good history of YouTube videos and interviews that sort of focus on emotional intelligence and mindfulness and equity, compassion, but also deep issues like systemic racism. How can all of this come together while serving as a member of the Virginia General Assembly?
Yeah, so what's really interesting about this is, so in the Western society, in America, we are very quick. We want the answer, we want it fixed here, and we want to jump to the end, like fix this process, fix this law, fix this, procedure. And all of that is eyes on the prize. We have to do it. We all know what's at stake for our citizens, for our district, for our country. We just look at what's happening around voters' rights and suppression, women's reproductive rights in different places around our country. But what we have to know is that a lot of this is inside out work. So we want to fix the problem over there, but without fixing what is causing the problem. And so what I like to bring into the traditional work of performance, of impact, of leadership, is that sort of inner piece about how am I showing up? What are my blind spots? How am I keeping the humanity in the equation so that all of us intersecting with our own identities, our own life experiences, and by the way, our own traumas, how are they informing what we're doing? We've got to be aware of that so we can be aware, we can disrupt, and we can mitigate. Those three things are critically important. So a lot of times people will latch on to the word mindfulness when they see that in my work. And what I will tell you about that, there is a misunderstanding about what we mean, because people think mindfulness is automatically some form of meditation. There is mindfulness meditation, but what you see here in my work, it's called mindfulness, and that simply means being fully present. So we're not listening to respond, we're actually listening to hear. And so you can't do that if you are not fully present. There are many tools that help us be mindful. Meditation is certainly one of them, but there are many ways for us to be fully present in the moment. And that is key. Because I can tell you as a lawyer, the one thing I was taught to do was to listen to you, to respond and dissect and tear apart everything you were saying. I wasn't listening to hear, I was listening to respond. And while that is a good skill in many situations, what we're finding today is it has started to tear at the fabric of how we can get to shared and common ground and interest. So we have to move in that direction, and we have to have a little bit of compassion, because the thing that we often do really well is what we call otherize, right? It's us and it's them, and they're not like me and they're like me. And when we continue to do that, we hold the divide very wide. And so that helps to perpetuate some of the systemic issues that we experience. And we can call it systemic racism. It's systems issues. And it's not just about race. It's not just about nationality. It's not just about religion. It's also about identity, sexual orientation, ability, disability. It is vast and wide. So what we want to do is use these tools to help us show up powerfully, with clarity, and with direction and purpose in the General Assembly. So I think all these skill sets help us get the work done, but inform how we do what we do and allow us to get it done together. And that's what I want to see more of.
Thank you. Okay, let me just say that I'm just over here like snapping my fingers. I'm like, yes, stop playing. Because I'm feeling like, you have no idea. I am just feeling everything that you're saying right now. So thank you. I appreciate you. You have no idea just how refreshing it is to hear that. But so I'm Monica Hutchinson. I am a community political organizer here in Virginia. And I work around paid family and medical leave. That is the main policy that we focus on, we center. But paid family medical leave intersects with so many other things that I don't think people really understand just how much, this would positively impact our life, right? So I just wanted to get your feedback. One, should you win your primary and should you be elected in November? Just want to make sure that I can get your make sure that you will support paid family medical leave when it comes up in the General Assembly, because the bill will come up in the General Assembly. Just want to make sure that you will support it. And like I said, I just like to hear your words on paid family medical leave.
Well, Monica, thanks for the question, and 100%, because here's the thing. People like to look at these things as if they're siloed issues. This medical leave, family medical leave, parental medical leave, all of that impacts the economy, which impacts the economic base, which impacts the school system. Like they're all intertwined. We must have that. I was sharing before we started the show that when I was younger, when we lived here, although I'm from Massachusetts originally, we actually lived in Manassas in the 70s. And my mother was a nurse at Prince William Hospital back when it was one building. And my parents had separated and ultimately divorced. And my mother was with my mom and my older sister, and we didn't have childcare. So there were many nights where my mother would have to sneak us into the hospital. My sister and I would sleep in a hospital bed while my mother worked the night shift. And so when I think about the leave that we need to have to make available, whether it's for medical purposes, whether it's for care of a loved one, an ailing one, or if it's simply for parental leave because a child is adopted or born or has an issue, it is imperative that we make that possible, because that makes for a healthier family unit, which makes for a healthier community, which makes for a healthier economic base. And we have to also make sure we're very careful about the words we use, because so much of this has been maternal leave and mother stuff. And so what it does is the language reinforces that it's a woman's place solely to manage and be responsible for these things, when in fact it is a co-parenting, and that co-parenting may or may not be both biological parents, but it allows for men to also fully step in and have permission and infrastructure support to be the full fathers that they want to be, and that they are, and that they can be. So I want to see it. I want to see it integrated, and I want to see whoever is acting in those parenting roles to have the right and the access and resource to 100% be able to do that, because it matters. That's our future as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I also wanted to just wanted to add that paid family medical leave, yeah, that it would help out a lot with maternity and paternity leave. One, it would help level the playing field when it came to employment for women, because if men were getting the same amount of paid leave off, like you said, for the birth of a child, take care of a family member, adopt a child, then it wouldn't put women at a disadvantage when women are young, of family beginning age, that we all know
Single
employers do
parents,
it.
yeah.
Single parents, right. And just want to add another aspect to it, just make sure everyone who's listening knows that paid family medical leave here in Virginia, over 55% of Virginia's working families do not have access to unpaid leave. Unpaid leave is FMLA that so many of us is used to. Majority of the people who do not have access are Black, brown, and low income women. So just want to make sure I say that again. Black, brown, low income women. Majority of the organizations and businesses that oppose paid family medical leave are very white and very affluent. So let that sink in, that the ones who are white and affluent are the ones who are fighting against those of us with Black, brown, low income having access to the same thing they have. And paid family medical leave will also help with mental health. It would help with the opioid crisis that we're dealing with here in Virginia. Once we get out of COVID, we have so many first responders and others who need to be able to take care of their mental health. And so paid family medical leave would allow for all of that stuff. I just wanted to add that. I just want to say thank you so much for all that you're doing. I appreciate you. And I do have to hop onto another call, but thank you again for having me join, Conrad.
Very
Thanks,
welcome.
Monica.
You have a great evening, and thank you for joining with us. All right, that was pretty good topics there. I need to hear a little bit of an echo of myself. But in any case, those are some good topics that you did bring up. Ms. Vanjie, you have a much better connection now, so I want to give you the floor here and ask a question or two of yourselves.
Okay, so Michelle, I love your response to that question, and I'm going to ask it at a different angle. So I know of several men who are raising their children, and in some cases have children. And I know we talk about FMLA and we talk about in a broad sense, but like you said, when you go to other countries, you don't get just 6 weeks off. I have a friend who had their son was born in France. They got 14
1 year.
off,
Mhm.
14 weeks paid with a nurse, a cook, house cleaner came past. I mean, you look at this and you say to yourself, I'm living in the wrong country, or I have to catch up.
Yeah.
How in Virginia, how do we get to this step?
Mhm.
How do we move forward? And what type of legislation will it look like to you?
Yeah, so that is such a great question because we have great examples. Even in our country, we don't have to go to other countries. We have some communities who are modeling it really well. But yeah, there are other countries where, in fact, you actually get a year off for leave after you have a child. But it's not equitable. It's not that it's fathers and mothers. And so that's one of the first places we have to get to. The other thing, as I mentioned before, is that words matter. So when we look at stuff like FMLA, the Family Medical Leave Act, and you get time off after birth, they treat pregnancy and birth as a sickness. That's how you get your 12 weeks, right? And to me, words matter. Having a child is not a sickness. You may have some complications that require medical attention, but that leave shouldn't be categorized under a sickness. And so I think that we have some, I mean, I know that's a little bit higher because those are federal things in many cases, but I think as we craft things at our local level, that words matter. Because the words will also give the indication of the inclusiveness that we want to create. And when we think about ways to do that, whether you're a single parent or even families who have, traditional family units are still struggling. I mean, we know that there are disproportionate impacts across different groups, but the thing that COVID has done is it has let us all experienced this vulnerability of not having enough, of not knowing enough, of not being in such uncertainty and being very scared because we are not sure how we're going to pay that electric bill, or how we're going to pay the rent or mortgage, or if it's safe to send our kids to school. Things are starting to unfold, and we're getting closer to moving in the right direction. So we have to look at the legislature holistically to think about, when we want to create a healthy and vibrant economy, we have to make sure the family unit, whatever that looks like, is safe and secure and has the resources it needs. So we can look at, how do we create this leave, childcare. It has to go through the different stages of life. Universal pre-K is great, but that is not enough. We have to go beyond that, and we have to make sure that for parents to be able to get back into the workplace, to be able to take the time off that they need to do the things they need, that their children are taken care of. So we need to make sure we have legislation that does that. The good news is we have some infrastructure money coming down from the federal government. And I think we're in an opportune time to think about, how can we creatively use those funds to build strong and legacy sustaining infrastructure for our Commonwealth and for our district. And in this way, I think we can create some new resources and programs that allow parents to thrive, so their children can thrive, their family unit thrives, and then the community thrives.
And you're so right. Words matter. What you just said was true. Legacy. And having a child, I've had a lot. That's 6. So I covered that. But it should have been, when your child is born, the parent does get that time off to bond with that child, to grow that child, because the most influential period for a child is before 2 years old.
Mhm.
And to push forward going into preschool, it should be, when your child is born, it shouldn't be Family Medical Leave Act. It should be child legacy development, so that children can thrive from birth. So a woman or a man can take care of that child and be there. It's funny because I was just actually, my daughter's about to have a baby, and she just realized that my husband and I sacrificed to the point that we knew what we couldn't have, so that our children never were in daycare, because we were always afraid if we send them to daycare, they're going to bring home something that we all will catch, and then they'll all be off work. And by the time, just like any young family, I wasn't always at the level where I had. But if we realized that early. But nowadays, these youngsters that are having babies, they are facing a whole new level of not having.
Yeah.
It's scary. It's really scary. I look at my daughter. I have no idea if we weren't in the how she would make it.
Mm-hmm.
You
It
know,
is very tough, Angie. I mean, that's why the resources have to be in place. But it's part of what has to happen too is the education around the resources that are available, and making sure we talk about access, right? So just because they're available doesn't mean they're accessible. We have to bring things into communities where people are, because sometimes just because it's available doesn't mean people can actually get to it, or that they even know about it. And the other thing is, we have to also think about, how do we allow for this leave to happen so people have choice, one, whether to use it, and two, how to use it. So if they get a certain block of time, maybe for them what works best for their family is to stagger it. So the father does a period, the mother does a period, and they do it over time. They do some together, some staggered. And people need to have choice, because our family dynamics are different. And so I think all of that is part of what we could design for ourselves to help everyone, regardless of income status and education status and job status, to be able to create the conditions for a thriving family.
I love that.
I want to jump in a little bit here, because I do remember, Ms. Michelle, you mentioned on some grants or other funding that might be from federal government on down, and you can help secure it in the General Assembly. And Ms. Vanjie, you ran for Congress in the same area of Virginia. So as we sort of talk about other issues that you might want to highlight, Ms. Michelle, how is it that there might be similar between the two because of where you guys are from in the state of Virginia?
Is that for Banji or is that for me?
For yourself, but also you guys can play off each other on that one. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's clearly some things that run across the fabric of the Commonwealth, right? There, so when we look at, the crisis of affordable housing, broadband, what happens in the rural communities, it's not that they don't happen in other communities. They are much more intense and exemplified, or amplified in rural communities. So when you think about things like healthcare, we've got issues here closer to DC, but they're also exacerbated in some of our rural communities through access, and how do we attract medical and health professionals to come to and stay in our rural communities. So there are a lot of things that overlap, and what's good for one, what gets sourced and supported in one, naturally helps with the extension to the other, because what happens in one place impacts all places. And you can look at these things not just in healthcare, but also say, in things like teacher pay and education. I mean, we don't have enough of the sort of education resource pool across all the areas that need to have it, rural, suburban, and so those are very similar. Vanjie, I'll pause there because I know you have stuff to add to it too.
I mean, that's wholehearted amen. And this is something that is dear to me, because in the rural communities, you're right. Not only do we not have, okay, so education is one. Education meaning educating the common public about where to get resources. I was just mentioning earlier today that most people in our rural communities have no idea that we have a social services department in every county. Okay. If you do go to that social services department, what are the type of programs available? We have no broadband. We have no health care. We have no infrastructure. We have limited education resources. Back in, I think it was 2019, there was a meeting, the DPVA meeting, and there was literally an argument between the more urban areas with the rural areas. And the statement that was made was, the urban areas pay the way for the rural areas. And that hurt, because we pay taxes. We don't pay as much, but we pay taxes. Somewhere along the line in our state, there has to be an equal balance. That doesn't matter how little we pay. We are still the same citizen, 100%. It's something that we have to develop in our state. We have to do better. We have to do better. And how do we do better? Electing new legislators in who understand that rural communities, sorry, but we have a lot of people in the rural communities who are have-nots, and the haves don't see the struggle of those people. And it's touching to me, because I mean, some of the stories you heard during my campaign, they're still happening. There's a John in every community who's going around asking his neighbor for food. There's an Emily in every community who can't afford clothing or broadband, or her parents can't afford a car. So there's limit there. If there's so many stories. There's Mary's. There's Alfred's. And Michelle Conrad, you've heard some of the stories I've told, and even today, I have a bad habit of picking people up who I see walking from a rural area to a more suburban area. And this guy was going to walk from King George to Fredericksburg. That's a 45-minute drive. Okay. It's what, 88 degrees today? And I picked him up, and he was like, well, I'm 67 years old. I've never owned a car. And I'm like, well, where the heck are you going to Fredericksburg for? He said to get his COVID shot. Guess where I went today to get my COVID shot, which I was already set. So I dropped him off there, and he saw another neighbor to take him back to King George. That right there says a lot. We need to do better in Virginia.
Now, that sort of sounds like something you had mentioned when you were running in terms of transportation issues you would like to fix.
Yeah.
So that's something that's a big plank within the Virginia government. So, Miss Michelle, I imagine that might be, as Miss Andrea Dixon asked, possibly number one or number two within your legislative agenda is trying to help really revitalize transportation beyond just the cities.
Absolutely. We have to, because all roads lead to the family unit and the economic viability of our communities and our Commonwealth. And not everybody has the luxury of having a car. Not everybody has the luxury of having multiple vehicles. And so there are challenges about how do I earn a living for myself and or for my family if I can't even get to and from work reliably. So we've got to extend transportation. We've got to make it so that there are extended lines, light rail, extended VRE where we can. Now, normally I would say, we have to be what I call tactical, right? We got to be practical and tactical. We got to figure out in the conditions that we have, how do we actually get progress going? And before the infrastructure package that's been sort of, that's being considered at the federal level, I think we may not have had the funds to really realistically consider how do we handle rail in a deeper way. But there's what a friend was telling me today: never waste a crisis. These crises that we're experiencing, everybody all of a sudden is feeling similar touch points of pain. And so when we have this, it's a moment where we can actually create something different. So we can look at those funds really creatively to address these very issues, along with things like affordable housing. And for example, one of the first pieces of legislation I want to look at is addressing the teacher pay increase. We did some amazing work, the folks that worked on teacher pay and getting that 5% increase. The other part of that invites us to go beyond is looking at how the formula is calculated to fund it. And what it happens is that in many of the places, the pay increases are tied to the SOQs, the standards of quality, which means that only 30 to 40% are really tied into the pay increase. And local places are left trying to figure out how to pay the balance to actually give that increase to teachers. I don't know what form that looks like, whether it's a commission or it could be many different kinds of forms. But what I do know is it's a problem and we need to address it. And that extends beyond rural or not rural. It hurts everybody, but disproportionately, we know that these things are really hurting folks in our rural communities, our lower economic communities, and our Black and Brown communities. And those tax bases are already very thin. So we need to look at those along with the transportation, because all of it is connected and all of it impacts one another.
Amen. Amen to that. Conrad, that's a great point to ask that question, because I don't think a lot of people realize that once you go beyond Prince William County and down to all the way until you get almost to Norfolk, right? There is no public transportation. There are no Ubers because we don't have great cell phone service. There are no lifts. So when you talk about limitations to communities, a lot of brown, Black communities in the state actually don't have, because it never was intended for them to have. And I hate to say it that way, but it was no intention for a brown or Black community to really come out. And you find that all over the country. So I'm hoping we get some new legislators in, a new governor, new lieutenant governor, make sure that we are moving forward in a positive momentum, because we have to bring light rail. It's funny. We have the trails, the rails, the trail program, and people aren't even walking these, but we don't have any way of getting people to them to even walk them if they wanted to. So looking forward to a new year, new session. I'm so proud to I endorse Michelle. Right off the bat, I found her to be dynamic, and it wasn't so much about one person, but all of us as a community, regardless of who you were. And that to me meant more than just a cliche, or a title. It meant she was ready to fight for everyone. So thank you for running. I mean, I know how tough it is. Mm.
Yes,
I
I
know.
thank
want to
you.
I want to follow up on that because our viewer Andrea Dixon also asked for the candidate, what are some of the issues in Virginia that you would be best to solve? And Vanjie touched on a lot in terms of your expertise on a lot of fields. So, what's things that you think it's definitely you that would be best to solve?
Mhm. Yeah, so I definitely think, as I mentioned before, sort of going back and expanding on the work for around teacher pay and equity in the classroom and education. So we have the education piece. We also have the small business piece, because I grew up in the tech space, but then I went beyond that and became a business leader. I was first a lawyer, then a business leader, and now I'm a small business owner. And so I understand what it means to be an employee and have those issues. And I understand what it means to be a small business owner trying to do right by people that you hire and trying to figure out how the heck you afford healthcare. I mean, I can't even tell you that, it's very difficult. So what I bring is a very unique lens to how do we tackle these issues so that we get equity and parity across the board for everyone. And the one thing I always tell people feel like when they hear the words equity or equality, they feel like that means I'm taking something away from somebody who has something already to give it to somebody who doesn't. And that's not what it means at all. It is all of us moving in closer together towards being in the puddle, the group of having. We've had too many people not having, which creates the problem. And the ingredients are the things that fuel the not having and that disequilibrium. So I think those two, and then affordable housing, because as I mentioned, so I didn't mention this piece, but as a child, I experienced housing insecurity, food insecurity. There was a period where my family, we couldn't afford a home, and I was living in a trailer park, but I was living in a camping trailer. We couldn't even afford a mobile home. I lived in what's called a prowler. So if you look up what a prowler and it hooked onto a back of a truck, that's what I lived in for a couple of years until we could get back on our feet. So I know what it's like to be able to be in a position of not having enough food, not having enough clothing, and for school being the place where that's where your food comes from, that's where your safety is, that's where your socialization is, it's where your electricity is, your bathrooms. And so so affordable housing is an area where I think I am very well poised to support. And because of the legal experience that I have, I can look at risk and I can look at what we call disparate impact. And that is one of my favorite expressions. And let me tell you what that means. It means that so many of us have the best intentions of creating something that's going to be powerful and be a tool for good, the greater good. And then all of a sudden we pass the legislation and it has an unintended effect or impact. And that impact that's adverse just kind of really impacts one little group or one subset of people. That's a disparate impact. It wasn't intended, but yet these people are flailing and really adversely hurt by what has been chosen. So because I know how to look for those things, when I'm crafting legislation, I'm going to think about those things. I'm going to be bringing those to the table and asking us and inviting us every single time to constantly go back and look, assess, and reassess. Is our intention matching our impact? All of us have to continue to do that because we keep the legislation fresh and applicable and relevant when we do that. So those are the kind of the economy, the education, and affordable housing. And of course, all of that to me is not separate from a green economy. We have to, I've done work in sort of the spaces to make choices around how do we pick vendors, how do we design our sort of our equipment, our vehicles. Like we need to be looking at those with green collar jobs in mind. And the way I think about that is green collar really is the umbrella. Underneath them, you have blue collar, white collar, all those, but everything really is green because that is what we need to do for our future, for our present and our future. And just as the Dulles corridor up here in Northern Virginia is like the tech corridor, the Route 28 and I-66 outer rim can be the green jobs corridor. So that's what I would say about those areas. And I think my skill set really lends to that very well.
Does sound pretty expansive.
Yes.
It's going to take a village, and that's the other thing is that, because I know how to work in really difficult divided places, one of the gifts I have is bringing people together. These are very ambitious changes, but they're so needed and necessary to ground our infrastructure for the future. So I'm really ready and willing to get in. I like having tough conversations. I lean into them. And we need to have more of that and let people know that we don't have to stand on the divide, that it's okay to be in the presence of disagreement and still be able to come together and get things done. And don't be afraid of having the tough conversations. So I want us to move away from sort of all this cursing and false accusations and exaggerations and just, quite frankly, take that part out. Let's get back to the nuts and bolts so we can get down to the real issues and create real solutions.
Now, see, Conrad, see what Seiko missed out on?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. I want to hop a bit off of the issues related to your running and bring that same optimism that you have regarding politics over to your community here. One of our favorite questions that we like to ask here at the Beach Brothers Show is, what's good? So from your neck of the woods, as they would say, what's good about that slice of Virginia that apparently is not that far away from Miss Vanjie's?
Yeah. I mentioned I'm from Massachusetts originally. In the 1970s, I lived here in Manassas. I lived over in Coverstone Apartments in Manassas. And I always remembered how rich and green this place was. There was just so much beauty here. And so when I got to be an adult and I started thinking about where did I want to lay roots to get away from all the cold and snowstorms from the Northeast, this is the first place that came back to me. And we have what I think is really amazing about this area, this district, is the diversity of culture, of things to do, of food, of background, of jobs and professional opportunities. There's so much richness here that I feel like there's always something to do and there's always someone new to meet. And I personally am a foodie. So I love all kinds of food. And what I love, like in the city of Manassas, we've got some amazing places to eat that I love to go to all the time, like CJ's, and we got Girani's Coffee House, and we've got mariachis, and we've got, I don't leave any out because I don't think they're good. It's just I can't name them all. There's so many, like in Old Town. There's also in Bristow, out my way, we've got, oh my goodness, we've got Sweet Zen, and we've got El Vaquero, and we've got so many amazing places to eat. But there's also lots of richness of education. So we've got the museum, and there's lots of programs that we have for our residents to help educate us on what our resources are, what we have access to. And while those are really good, of course we have more work to do, but we also have a community of people who really care and have family units in these neighborhoods. And, I grew up in a neighborhood. We played outside. We came home when the lights turned on. As long as you were home for dinner, you were good. You were golden. And what I see here is a lot of people, kids still playing in the street where they can be, and also learning technology. We've got lots of resources that bring people together and help people understand and build relationships. I was just at a program last month that brought kids together with our local police and help them understand what's happening in these dynamic times, what changes have to happen, And it was really beautiful because people really here on the ground every day are trying to bring people together and make a difference. And we have all of that here and more. So I think it's one of the best places to live and would be an honor to represent.
That's awesome. I want to get down to your final thoughts tonight. Just give sort of like the summary as to why voters should come up to you and lend your vote on June 8th. And also give us what we need to know about your campaign. Drop all the needed social media links and websites that you have.
Absolutely. So I will tell you that I am a candidate that has already been affirmed and confirmed by people I've spoken to, whether I'm knocking doors, we have an aggressive ground campaign, we have mail, we have it all. But what's really rich for me is the conversations I've been having with people. And here's what's being reflected back to me. I am clearly a bridge builder, somebody who cares about people regardless of what political party they're sitting into. We have to date had people from across all political lines, Trump supporters, Republicans, independents, and Democrats say, I want to support you because you are listening and you are hearing what is important to me. And you're not just saying, because I don't agree, I don't matter. That is not my constitution. That is not how I lead. And that is not how I bring people together. That is a powerful skill in this day where people are so divided. The next thing is that I have a broad skill set, unlike any other candidate on the roster. I bring it all together. And I'm not somebody who hasn't had to work hard or struggle or doesn't understand or is disconnected from the challenges that everyday people in our community face. I don't need to read about them. I've lived them and am living them. So I bring a sense of connection, authenticity, and personal experience to what it is that we have to tackle together. The other thing is that I'm so incredibly focused singularly on 50. I want to be here. I want to represent the people of this district. And while my work here in the district has been mostly focused on the teen programs, volunteering at schools, and helping with voter registration cards, but I'm laddering the work that I've done in this country, across the globe, and bringing it here to benefit everyday people and everyday families just like my own. So with that, I think you wanted me to, my website, that kind of stuff, you want to put it in the chat or just say it? Or
yeah, sure, drop it in the private chat and I'll move it on over to the comment screen here.
All right. So I think the other thing is, we're always looking for volunteers. We're always looking for donations. We're always looking for community and support. So we welcome that if anybody wants to help. If anybody has questions, because I think that dialogue is so important, because that needs to continue. Whoever wins, that has to continue after the elections. The dialogue between constituents and residents and your representative must continue all the time, because that's going to inform what we do and how we refresh and nuance things at the legislative level. So,
speaking of refresh, I don't see the links yet.
I'm getting there.
I just want to say, everyone who hasn't spoken with her in person, this is the person who you get every time. Just like me, very real, very down to earth. We're people. We don't want to go and pretend to be a form of leadership. Just like Michelle, you run for office because you want to serve the community and you want to serve them with everything you have. And Michelle is that person. And I ask that you all support me in supporting her. Donate. Volunteers. We need volunteers for GoTV, GOTV. In the next 2 weeks, if you have time, contact our campaign. We need door knockers. We need material lit drops. We need people to make phone calls and you postcarders. Y'all been slipping. Postcarders. We need to get postcards out for Michelle so that people know that there is an election, as we say every year, an election in June. So please get out there if you haven't voted yet. You can vote early or you can go on June 8th, but please be aware, get out there and represent.
I want everyone to hop on over to www.michelle4va.com and also hit up Twitter and Facebook at Michelle4Virginia and Instagram at Michelle4Virginia50.
Yes.
Remember those and study up, and remember June 8th is coming. And I want to thank you, Michelle, for joining us tonight. We're going to look forward to June 8th. I know I've already got mine in there. So I want to definitely wish you great luck, and we might just need to have you on once again down the line. So I hope you have a great evening.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me on. Thanks, Vanjie, as well. And thanks, everybody. It's been great to be in conversation. Take great care and hope to see you all again soon.
Take care.
Thank you.
Now, Ms. Vanjie, want to have any final thoughts about our guest on this evening?
You know, when I met Michelle, I was very humbled because for her credentials, she is so personable. We became instant family, and that to me meant a lot. And I say to people, if you don't know who your if you don't know who your current legislators are, you need to get to meet some of the new candidates. And if you haven't met your legislator and there's no one running against them, get out there and talk to them. They need to hear your voice because their agenda may be different from your agenda, but they need to hear what your agenda is. And Michelle is a great person to bounce it off of. And I'm proud to have endorsed her. And y'all know I haven't really been endorsing a whole lot of people this year because, again, I'm friends with all of them. So I like to keep that friendship.
Good point. And Miss Michelle seems like a great friend to have. And the HD50 could have a friend as a delegate down the line. So I also want to thank you, Ms. Vanjie, for coming on the show tonight. You're sort of like a regular beach sister. So, for the next time, we can't wait to have you on as well. And I hope you have a great evening tonight.
Thank you.
Take care. Now, I'd like to thank all of you Beach Brothers Show viewers for watching tonight and learning more about Michelle Maldonado and Virginia's race for the 50th House District. Don't forget to watch the Beach Brothers Show every Thursday evening right here on Facebook and YouTube. Also, make sure you look up the Hampton Roads Black Caucus. Look to join that organization, perhaps, and help to make strident and positive change here in Virginia Beach. And as we close out tonight, I want you to all pay attention to the outro of our great Beach Brothers and what we have to provide. I hope you all have a great evening tonight.
It's never too early or too late to plan for retirement. Let me show you how to protect yourself, your loved ones, and your assets from loss due to catastrophic decisions that may affect you the rest of your life. Please call me.
That's a message from the great Jose Cruz, that Beach Brother. I'm here tonight, and let's close on out with a great message from the Beach Brothers Show.
This show was brought to you by Positive Vibes Incorporated, our consulting services. We do credit fixes, we do tax resolution, we lend private money, and debt consolidation. So if you need some of these services, we're waiting here for you. Credit fixes, tax resolutions, private money, and debt consolidation. Make sure you call Positive Vibes Incorporated.